Welcome to part 8 of the MGB Rebuild. Some exciting stuff happening this month. I'm finishing the final part of the painting, or the painting that I'm doing. So I'm going to paint the bits that are less important and not sort of obviously visual. And that's the engine bay, the interior, the underside of the bonnet and the underside of the boot, and the inside of both the doors. Those bits aren't uh, immediately seen, and so I can do them here at home. And if it gets a bit of dust in it every now and then or something, it's really not that important. And we'll leave all the exterior parts to the professionals to do the final coats. So those bits have now all been done, and they look rather smart, I have to say, and it's making it look like we're getting somewhere now. Anyway, all that's left to do now in the body is to bolt the front fenders back on, um, and then give the outside one final sanding. Once that final sanding is done, then it's all ready to send off to the professionals and have the exterior professionally painted in a booth. So when that comes back, we really get stuck into it. In the meantime, these couple of photos show the inside and the engine bay and things, and they're looking very smart. Some other exciting things that happened this month. I got all the interior work back from the upholsterer, so that's all the door cards and the seat covers and padding. Now the big challenge will be to strip the existing seats, replace all the foams, have the frames of the seats re-powder coated, and then reassemble it with the new seat covers on it. So that'll be fun. So if you go back a few episodes, you would have seen us discussing various colours, but you've obviously now, with some of those interior parts, seen the colour, the final exterior colour, which is going to be a nice grey looking colour, which is pretty neutral, but it'll look quite smart. And we've also talked about what colours we're going to do the interior. So we decided that, with the grey outside, it's a fairly dull colour, but we want it to pop a little bit. So the interior is going to be red, which we think will contrast quite nicely to the grey exterior. But once again, here the purists will probably hate me, but I hate the internal vinyl finishes on the MGBs. They're very plain, and as they age, they tend to wrinkle a little bit when they get moist. So we're going to jazz it up slightly, but hopefully keep it in reasonably good taste. So we've gone for this red colour material, and on the door cards, while they are relatively straight in most areas, I've got a pleat that runs through the middle. Um, it's not a deep pleat, it just gives it a little bit of character and gives it a fold. And we'll carry that through into the seats, so they'll have a pleated sort of centre strip. Anyway, it's my car. I'll do it the way I like. But we think it'll look quite nice. So while the bodywork is away being painted, we're catching up on some of the other odd jobs. So the seats. So here we are with the current seats. They're not too bad, these two seats that I managed to pick up cheaply. So I stripped them down, cleaned them up, fixed these mechanisms that were all seized and bound, inspected all these bits, pulled them apart, repainted the frames, and replaced all the cushions and springs and things underneath, and then reassembled um, with the new covers, which I've got. So here you can see I'm in the process of reassembling. This is obviously one of the backs, and I like this. This looks nice, and I think combined with the door cards you saw before, they're going to look great. Another small job to finalise while the body is away is the differential assembly. So I hadn't put on the final bearings on the axle, and the new hubs and the backing plates and the brake shoes. So I did that on both here. So the diff is now fully complete right out to the brake drums and things. Now, I wasn't going to actually start on the engine yet, but since the body is likely to be away for a few more weeks at least, I figured that I could strip the engine down and at least get all the parts underway and perhaps send the block and head off to have that worked. So I got to work, stripped it down. You can see that it was in fairly rough condition, I have to say. A lot of rust, but when I pulled it apart, what I found was that most of the parts were actually in really good order. I think it had had a rebuild perhaps not long before it was decommissioned. You can see the pistons look very, very clean in particular. Anyway, a lot of the parts actually ruined anyway because of the amount of rust that was inside the engine where it had just been sitting. So I'm having to replace things like the push rods and head studs and things like that simply because of the amount of corrosion. So I've also had a look at things like the starter motor, and I decided that I wasn't even going to bother trying, so I bought a new high torque starter motor, which you can see here. Similarly with the alternator, it just wasn't worth it given the cost of a brand new one, so I've replaced that. This distributor was in really good order. It's been replaced as well, so I actually rebuilt that fully and replaced the points with a contactless electronic ignition. You can see the timing gear, and I put a new duplex chain and a tensioner, but those gears cleaned up really well with some rust dissolver. And you compare that picture against some of the earlier photos, and it's amazing. You would think they're new. Similarly with the rocker assembly, I ended up buying all new rocker arms because some of the faces were badly pitted, and I found a place that sold some surplus ones very cheaply. So $100 got me 8 new rockers. So here's the completed assembly. So it's on to the gearbox. So firstly, a bit of a tub, and then a scrub with a wire brush to get it clean before opening her up. Um, I think we've got a stroke of luck here. This gearbox is in excellent condition. I was lucky enough to have a friend who came round and inspected it, who's a long-time mechanic and MG aficionado. You know who you are, Rod. Thank you. And he's had an experienced eye on it, checked all the synchro rings, etc., and declared it in excellent order. So what we're going to do to this is replace the front and rear oil seals, replace the front gasket, replace the side cover gaskets, and replace the overdrive filter and all the O-rings that are in the overdrive solenoid and those sorts of areas, just for the sake of it while we've got it apart. So I've had to make another dodgy tool to get the end nut undone, so a bit of angle iron, bolted to the flange and then clamped to the bench. Enabled me to get that nut undone and hold the shaft still. On the front end, I've replaced the front seal. I've put in a new carbon thrust bearing. I've replaced the pivot bolt and the pivot bush on the clutch arm there. We put in a new rubber seal where it goes through the bell housing. On the other end there, we put a new shaft that goes into the slave cylinder. Okay, so I think that's about all for this month. We have been a bit distracted though. We just got ourselves a brand new Model 3 long range. Here it is in all its resplendent red glory. I know it's not exactly a classic car, but I tell you, if you haven't driven a good electric car, you need to get your finger out and go and drive one because these are an excellent driver's car. They are a lot of fun, despite your preconceptions. Anyway, till next month, thank you for watching.